I was asked to say, what is a co-op? What is a community land trust? So basically a housing cooperative is either nonprofit or resident owned. It is always resident controlled, and there is a basic of the one person, one vote. Those are really the basic components of a housing cooperative. Next slide. There are three types of housing cooperatives. There's a market cooperative, there is a limited equity cooperative, and there is a non-equity cooperative. The market cooperative is basically can be sold at whatever the market will bear. Although typically it will be slightly less than what a condominium would be. The limited equity co-op, you purchase a share when you move in, but and you get a small return on that investment. The non-equity co-op, you do not pay anything to move in other than typically a security deposit. But beyond that, the three types of co-ops all operate pretty much the same. They elect a board of directors, they do their own management, and although your smaller co-ops often will be fully self-managed, the residents themselves will do all of the work. Your larger co-ops are more likely to either pay the residents some amount or even hire professional management. The Bay Area Community Land Trust works with all three types of co-ops, but we really focus on the limited equity and the non-equity co-ops because they are in fact much more affordable. The primary difference between these two models beyond the share is how government agencies view them. The limited equity co-op is viewed as ownership, home ownership. The non-equity co-op is really viewed as rental property. And where this makes the biggest difference is when it comes to property taxes. The non-equity co-op is actually very much like a nonprofit rental, and if the residents are below 80% of median income, which in Berkeley is about $50,000 for a single person, the units are all qualify for an exemption from property taxes. The limited equity co-op is viewed as home ownership, and therefore the property is assessed at market value when the residents purchase a property. The county assessor will reassess at market value, and so the property taxes, thanks to Prop 13, are going to be very, very high. And this can be the difference between being able to acquire existing housing, which is typically what we do, and making the project ultimately unaffordable. So we definitely are finding we are doing more of the non-equity co-ops and the limited equity co-ops. And we've been receiving calls every week or two from people who are concerned about being displaced. We've heard gentrification, displacement. This is a reality, and we are getting calls regularly, people asking us to assist them with buying the homes that they're in. And we are currently working with 10 properties, I'm sorry, I got my 10 minutes, 4 properties, trying to help them purchase their homes. We believe we can do it as the non-equity co-ops. It really becomes almost impossible to do it anymore as a limited equity co-op. So I keep talking about we. Who are we? Well, we, BACLT, is a we are a community land trust, and there are approximately 250 community land trusts throughout the country, about 12 now in California. We are one of the few housing developers who are a membership organization, which means the board of directors is elected by the members, and there is direct accountability back to the community. The classic model is that the CLT will own the property, either just the land or the entire property. And then the residents get a 99-year lease, which really gives them the right to live there all their lives, as long as they, comply with the basic rules that are part of that process. In addition, though, the land trust not only assists households in buying their property, but we're there for the long term, meaning that we provide training and technical assistance initially to make sure that the residents really understand what's involved in running the property. And we're there really to give the oversight to make sure in the long term that the property is well managed, and we really make an emphasis on the keeping the property well maintained. We really call this stewardship of the land. Those who live there are the stewards. They're not really the owners or the residents, but they're the stewards of that land. We've developed an extensive training program, and we are very thankful that the City of Berkeley for the past 4 years have provided a small contract to allow us to provide these services to low-income co-ops in Berkeley. We also offer the services outside of the community for a small fee. And finally, what we do, as I mentioned earlier, is we really help people to purchase the properties that they're living in, very much what Steve was talking about earlier, and I think Noni as well. This is a key way of preventing displacement and gentrification. We help people purchase the homes where they are living. We do not do single-family homes except to the extent where many of the properties that we are working with have been organized as collectives, and there may be as many as 8 people living in a large single-family home. I'm going to next focus on, we missed these. I'm going to just quickly, I was talking about, this is a market rate co-op in Berkeley. It's Berkeley Cano, 60 units. The next one is actually right next door, Park Street Co-op, a limited equity co-op. And the next one is Brown Shingle, which I'm going to be talking about next. The significance of this is these 3 properties are on one block in South Berkeley. You drive by it, you have no idea that these are co-ops. They are resident owned and resident managed, and they are out there. So, Brown Shingles, some of the people here may actually know more about the history of it than I do. It's in the South Campus neighborhood. Currently, it is providing affordable housing for 16 adults and 3 children. But the history, I'm going to touch on very briefly, relates back to what was known as BTU Local Number 7. Who here knows about BTU Local Number 7? Great, well, there's a few. I will tell you the story only very briefly, but in the early 1970s, there was a notorious landlord known as Bockenheimer. He bought up properties all over Berkeley, tore them down, built these big stucco boxes. But in 1973, the tenants in the Bockenheimer properties went on a rent strike. And after a 2-year struggle, in 1975, they forced Bockenheimer into foreclosure. And the BTU number 7 was able to purchase the Brown Shingle property. Unfortunately, Bockenheimer's other properties were sold on the market, but this property was really became a symbol of a victory over the greedy landlords. So fast forward to 2013. actually, go back to that. Go one more. No, go back. I'm sorry. Go back another. Yeah, okay. Well, there's a slide in there that was actually the front page of the Daily Cal, and I don't. Yeah. So we can leave it on that one for a while. It was actually we inherited a whole file of the history, and this was a demonstration in 1975. We were approached and asked if we would be interested in taking over the property. The property had been within the Brown Shingle Collective for 38 years, but there'd been a very kind of loose organizational structure. Rents had been kept very low, which meant that many low-income community activists were able to thrive there. But one of the biggest problems was that property maintenance had not been kept up. So after lengthy negotiations this year, the property was actually donated to Bay Area Community Land Trust. It will now be permanently affordable. We have undertaken substantial renovation and have started a training program for the residents with the intention of, within the next year, transferring a substantial part of the property management to the residents. One big difference about Brown Shingle was because the property had been donated to us, we were able to take out a loan to do the renovation, but still keep the rents very affordable. We are working, as I said before, with a number of properties where we really don't have that luxury. Even where we have landlords who are willing to sell and willing to work with us, we're paying market prices, and it just becomes almost impossible to make this happen. So one of the things we'd really like to see happen in Berkeley would be to establish a fund that would provide, provide money to assist us in buying these properties. The city of San Francisco has what's called the Small Sites Acquisition Program, and it's really focused on smaller properties, which most of our traditional nonprofit housing developers really can't deal with because they use tax credits, they use funding programs that really are just not practical for small properties. The community land trust model really prefers smaller properties, smaller than say 25 units. And so we really urge the city of Berkeley to consider doing a program much like the one that San Francisco has set up. Even just a small gap of something in the range of 10 to 20% of the purchase price can really make the difference in acquiring it. And typically that will be far less than the $100,000 per unit that Steve talked about. Some of the properties we're working with, if we could get a $10,000 or $20,000 per unit subsidy, then we could actually acquire a lot of properties that are currently at risk, residents who will be displaced, either forced out of the community or forced into housing situations where we'll be paying a much higher rent. So, thank you.
Thank you, Rick.